You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, I'm Kelly Barner, and today is Friday, June 24th, 2022.
6.
Why do so many procure-to-pay implementations fall short of our expectations? Most implementation failures are the result of a few common problems that can be observed across industries and organizational maturity levels. In each of these cases, procurement's ability to lead a successful change management initiative is brought into question. Let's be honest, no one really likes change, but it is unavoidable. We need to learn to outsmart and outplan these P2P busters, the roadblocks and setbacks that have derailed our implementations for years. A P2P implementation should produce a minimum 10x ROI from a hard dollar savings over cost perspective. To do this, however, we have to overcome 3 common problems. To learn more about these problems and hopefully prevent yourself from repeating the mistakes of the past, download our new white paper, P2P Busters, Fighting Back Against the 3 Main Causes of Implementation Failure, created in collaboration with the team at CoreCentric.
5.
In this week's podcast, Philip Eidson shares a conversation he had with David Lattin, head of Global Indirect Procurement at Logitech. They focused their conversation on Logitech's efforts to promote and advance gender equality. Let's listen to a brief excerpt from their conversation, and then I'll share a few thoughts on the other side.
Now, I wanted to bring you onto the pod to talk about something you mentioned about social good and the importance of I know how important culture is at Logitech. And you had just launched a coalition for gender fairness. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. But I want to ask why this topic of gender fairness is something that's important to Logitech.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Phil. You mentioned culture there, and I think there's a few different answers to that question. And the first one is definitely Logitech as a company and our culture. Hugely values-driven business. One of our core values is what we summarize as being equality and environment. And what we mean by that is that we are nearly a $6 billion company with thousands of employees in our company. We are going to have an impact on this world. It's impossible to avoid that. We will have an impact on this world. What we want to do and what we aspire to do is make sure that impact is a positive one towards the environmental challenges, towards the what feels like the never-ending journey towards equality. We want to make sure we're a positive impact towards that. And the coalition is really an actualization of that. I think slightly more broadly than that, when you think about Logitech and where we operate, we're a consumer electronics company. That is an industry where gender is certainly a very hot topic, whether it be in talent and the jobs of tomorrow, the disruptive jobs of tomorrow. If you look at those, a lot of there's big gender issues even in those jobs of tomorrow that we can disrupt today's economy with. We have a lot of people in that space. It's consumer electronics has had a long history really where I think gender equality is a really big topic for us. Even verticals such as gaming, again, it's a really hot topic about how can we make sure that it's a very gender equal industry going forward. So as a company, not only our values but where we operate and who we are as a company really mean that gender is front and center for us due to our culture.
Yeah.
And I think we can actually really make a big difference due to where we are with consumer electronics and gaming. So that's really strong for us. And then more broadly, I think when you look at the wider society, we've got the ambitious SDG 5 goal for gender equality in 2030. It's looking really tough to hit that target, and we're only 7.5 years away from that. Indeed, a recent report from the World Economic Forum suggests that we're 136 years away from gender equality.
Wow.
So there's a hell of a lot needs to be done, in short, and large organizations such as Logitech and others, we really need to realize that we can have a huge impact towards that and get going with that impact, because otherwise we're certainly never going to hit that SDG target in 2030, but unless we take some really dramatic action. So I think that's what we need to all be doing.
Here's what stands out to me about David's comments. and commitment for that matter. For the last 2 years, supplier diversity has been the cause du jour for many procurement organizations, and that does include women-owned businesses. The broader any initiative's goals are, the harder it may be to make decisions that drive measurable impact and results. I think Logitech's decision to embrace gender equality as part of their mission is a wise one, and other companies have done the same around minority-owned or veteran-owned businesses specifically. We can't all do everything, but if everyone chooses a cause and then really makes an impact, we'll find society in a much better place. You can hear the full conversation in the latest Art of Procurement podcast, wherever you choose to listen to your podcasts.
4.
The Art of Procurement team and our partners are continuing to hash out the final details of the agenda and sessions for Category Palooza. All of us feel like we need to respond to external pressures from the economy, supply chains, and ever-changing buyer-supplier dynamics. In a post published this week, my colleague Helen McKenzie makes an excellent point about the need for agility in addition to muscle. As she points out, quote, "Using strong-arm tactics is no longer a guaranteed way to put a good deal in place. Often in our categories, we lock into specific ways of thinking. We think the tactics we've used to good effect in the past will work again now. Of course, that might be true because we faced inflation and the threat of recession before. But it's more likely that these times of change to economic and trade dynamics mean we need to think differently and seek out something new. Often, ideas can come from other areas of the business or different categories rather than focusing on the familiar." End quote. So the question then becomes, where do we go for inspiration? Where do we go to find something new to try? Helen suggests looking at other category strategies or borrowing from directs to manage indirects or vice versa. Where do you get your inspiration? Let us know by posting a comment and tagging us on LinkedIn.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
It has been a little while since we've added a new episode to our Startup and Growth series, but we did that this week in an interview with Natasha Foster, co-founder and COO of Paid. She talks about the importance of perspective when it comes to designing and implementing procurement tech. For instance, most of the time, procurement isn't doing the buying anymore. That is done by the business. The technology we put in place should recognize and accommodate that well. We also have to be able to manage suppliers at scale, another long-standing challenge, and one that signals for the need to prioritize supplier onboarding higher than it has been in the past. To hear more from Natasha, you can watch or listen to her interview with Philip Eidson on our site.
2.
As many of you know, I spent the first quarter of 2022 up to my eyeballs in supplier diversity for the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator program. And once you cover something that exhaustively, you never quite separate from it. Last week, Philip Eidson spotted a great article in the Harvard Business Review that presents compelling and I would say disruptive new research for companies to consider about how they present their supplier diversity program justification to prospective employees. This new research compared the effectiveness of business case justification and what they call fairness case justification. In other words, are you looking for hard ROI, or are you going for a morally, ethically, or fairness-driven program? Now, of the two, which would you think survey participants preferred? The results were very clear. Job candidates preferred the fairness case justification by a landslide, especially in underrepresented communities. According to the research team, 80% of companies use a business case justification for supplier diversity, while 5% use a fairness case justification, which means 80% of us are currently getting it wrong, at least if job candidates are an effective proxy for customers, suppliers, and business partners. I'll share the link to the full article in today's episode notes. It is a must-read article if supplier diversity is any part of your responsibilities.
1.
I've already mentioned Category Palooza and our work to make sure this year's sessions prepare you for this challenging moment and all of the ones that will follow it. But did I remind you to register? Completely live, virtual, and free, Category Palooza will give you the category level insight and inspiration you need to make it through the third quarter. Because we are using a virtual event platform and not a webinar platform, you will also have the opportunity to engage in real time with our speakers, the other attendees, and of course, the whole Art of Procurement team. Category Palooza is being held on August 11th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern, and we hope to see you there. Just go to artofprocurement.com/calendar to find out more. And you can find all of the links associated with the stories and content mentioned today at the show notes page for this episode at artofprocurement.com/podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.